Being a single mom and doing it all by yourself is brutal. Learn the brain and energy tools to get back to your center and overcome your challenges. Welcome to a new episode of Single Moms Doing It All, the podcast to help you navigate the single mom life with more ear. Not ear, ear too, because you need to listen to your teens with more ease, I meant. So today I have a special guest and talking about ease and joy, she's the perfect guest. And she falls into the category of the series, The Realm of All Possibilities, and you'll see why. I just want you to, when you have an idea, to go with it and do not discard ideas because they seem weird or they seem undoable, because you'll see with my guest that not only did she follow her joy, she followed her passion and she created something very concrete in the form of a book to start with. So stay tuned and don't forget, I also want to remind you about the fact that the membership has a 7-day trial option now. So if you were on the fence and you didn't know if you would like to be part of it, don't hesitate anymore and go try it for 7 days. So my guest today, and I'm going to have to put my glasses back on because I can't read otherwise. My guest today is Louisa Dykstra. Louisa is a best-selling author, a mom of 3, a community activist, the leader of a team of 10,000 plus direct sellers, a violinist, and a Hugh Jackman superfan. Before becoming an entrepreneur, she worked in corporate training, specializing in human performance and motivation. She's a terrible cook, that's funny, and usually has hundreds of unread emails, but she loves helping women believe in themselves because that changes the world. And I totally agree with that. Welcome, Louisa. How are you?
I am so good. Thank you for having me, Muriel.
I'm very excited to have you because, to tell you the truth, your journey inspires me because I'm someone who's a double Capricorn, very, very serious, and I'm working on lightening up and following my joy. And your book, Hugh Jackman and the Joy Revolution, and I'll put the link for the audience to go grab it and buy it, is the proof that you can follow your joy and still give birth to one of your dreams and a project going from a passionate heart. So before we go into your book and into questions, I would love to hear from your story and what was the journey with that book? What was the starting point to get to where we are today?
It's so funny because I did not start out with a goal to write a book. I had no idea that was ever going to be part of my life. And so it started with the movie The Greatest Showman, which this is, kind of explained in the book. But I went to see that movie kind of reluctantly. I didn't know what it was about. And I was like, oh, but circuses and animals. And and what I found was, oh my word, this is a gorgeous metaphor for the power of dreams and how our brains work and the importance of authenticity and the power of that. And it has a soundtrack that are really, really good words to have stuck in your head, and it sticks in your head. And so I just became a huge fan of that movie. I told my whole team to go watch it and buy the soundtrack. And then I started researching, like, who made this movie? And that's when I started watching lots of interviews with Hugh. And I just wanted to hear more. Like, I was so fascinated who is this person? I was vaguely aware of him as an actor, but really not. And so getting more of a feel of who he was as a person, and then seeing interviews with Hugh and his wife, and their relationship is something that I would love to emulate. And so I basically just kind of became obsessed. I mean, that's just the real truth. And I would think, I should be doing something productive with my time. Like, my kids are probably over there watching YouTube, and I'm over here spending hours watching YouTube just because there's interview after interview. And then I just, like I learned so much about Hugh and Deb, and I could just spout facts about them. And so I was visiting my brother in New York, and which is where Hugh and Deb's primary residence is. And so I kept seeing, like, we walk by Broadway, or we'd walk by Carnegie Hall, and that would remind me of a story about Hugh. And my brother is like, "What? Are you like writing his biography or something? Like, why do you know all these facts about Hugh?" And I was like, writing his biography. I could actually do something with all of this information in my head. So that, like, it just came out as a silly idea. I was halfway through writing it before I figured out that I was writing about him because it helped me understand myself, and how it had inspired me and how it could inspire everybody else. So it, like, my journey with the book was purely just surrendering to something that I was so interested in I couldn't help myself, and seeing how that led me into a whole new aspect of my life, which, like, that's his story too. And watching how his career developed, by him saying, I don't know, it sounds fun, and going for it. So it's both the story in the book and the story of the book.
And that's perfect, because even me with my business right now, I picked the goal to do 101 interviews, with me being interviewed on other podcasts, and to see just where it's going to lead me. Just pure curiosity and fun. And in our society, we're not taught to follow that joy and that fun and that curiosity. We're taught to be serious, to have a goal, steps, and very, very practical. But I think the fire that you had under your project made it more, not only more fun, but I'm sure there were what we call synchronicities. For people who don't know what they are, the way I would describe it, it's like supposedly random happenstances, but that are not really random, because you're at the right time, at the right place, you meet the right person. Yeah. Did that happen with your book too? Because the energy that you put into it was so joyful and magical.
So much. Yeah, it was really and I never pushed myself to write. I just, I would go through spurts where I wrote a lot, and then I would go through a while where I didn't. And I thought, I'm just going to wait until the energy bubbles up again. And it is so opposite of what we're taught. Yeah. But this book is actually about brain science, which you can't tell from the title. But it is because when we start studying the brain, we see that this message of, like, do the things that you don't want to do, work before play, like, that is not making use of the human brain. That is really minimizing our potential. And the things where we are lit up, that is where we start to use more of our brain. That's where we find our creativity. That's where we change the world, is in those moments where we come up with some idea that, nobody's ever said it that way before, or nobody's thought of that solution before. That is when we are at our best. Yes. So it's not about being lazy and doing what's fun. It's about plugging in to your power and doing what's fun.
And when you talk about the brain, I talk a lot in this podcast and everywhere about the reticular activating system that acts like a filter to bring coherence between the inner world and the outer world. And when you're plugged on joy, your brain will show you every opportunity for more joy and more passion and more fire. So I'm sure, did it affect, while you were writing this book, did you see a difference in the, I know you're a very positive person, but was it even emphasized as you were working on that book in your life?
The funny thing is, in fact, Dana could probably remember me, calling her and being like, I know that I should be working on my Norwex business, but I just want to sit and write my book. And she would laugh at me and, like, what is your book about not using the word should? And so finally, when I just said, you know what, I'm just going to write. And through the process of that, I learned so many new insights into how to lead my team and how to inspire people. And I ended up with more energy for my business than ever. So that's my message, is, like, our emotions and the things that light us up, the things that attract us, that is our intuition talking. So we need to listen to that.
And that's funny, because I know that for me with the podcast, so I have a topic for the week and I'm recording the episode about that topic. And almost every week, I will have something happening in my life linked to me practicing what I'm going to talk in this episode. And sometimes it kicks my rear, sometimes it's more pleasant, but it's always in sync. So do you remember maybe an episode or something that has to do with what you were teaching in the book? And we're going to go into parenting soon in the chapter, that forced you to apply that in your life while you were writing it?
I don't know about while I was writing it, but just the whole picture of wanting to learn more about Hugh Jackman. So there are lots of fan pages of him on the internet, and there was one particular page that I was attracted to because it seemed to really be about him as the whole person, you know, not just photos or not just Wolverine or whatever, but it was about Hugh as the whole person and his philanthropy and all of that. Long story short, I became an admin of that page, which again, you would think, oh, that's wasted time, you know, like I'm not doing anything productive. And yet, we know Facebook changes all the time.
Yeah.
So here I am now doing something I love as one of the team of admins on this page with 75,000 followers. And I pretty much always know what's going on with the Facebook algorithm because we see it right away when something changes. We can see something different in our reach or in our, you know, so I have learned so much about social media and how to help my team through now everybody doing business completely online because of this pandemic. And that social media experience that I had has been helpful. So it's just follow your joy, trust it.
That's beautiful, because sometimes you do something in your life and you don't realize why. And sometime later, for me, it happened with years later, you realize that this was preparing you for that. And that's beautiful. So
Absolutely.
in the book, the way I perceived it was that you is some kind of a filter for what you're talking about, and you're using his personality and his life to demonstrate the principle of, I would say, self-help, right? That's how you categorize your book?
I would probably do somewhat self-help, but it's almost, I find like the genre of self-help implies that there's something wrong with you that needs to be improved.
Okay.
And my book is discover the power that is within you when you learn who you are and trust yourself,
Okay.
you know? So it uses his story as just a really, you know, top of the line example of what happens when you do that.
Yeah. And so on the chapter 13, which is called Revolutionary Parenting, first of all, there is a quote from him that I really like. It's everything is exposed with kids. There's no artifice because they see you for exactly what you are. And I think that's key to understand when you're a parent, because later on in that chapter, you say that more than what you say, your kids see. I'm trying to find it. They see what you do and who you are. Tell us more about that, and how did you start putting that in practice with your kids then, or did you start way earlier than that?
Yeah, luckily when my first baby was born, I found some mentors in a parenting group that really were teaching, you know, mentor according to your instincts, not mentor, parent. It's the same thing, right?
Yes. Yes.
So just, you know, like with breastfeeding, a group would say, watch your baby, not the clock. You know, like don't be tied to the clock. Just watch your baby. What do they need? And just teaching that from the very beginning of that the importance in parenting is connection, and that you can, you know, you can get through anything if you understand them and they understand you, that it's not a martyr situation where you're giving up yourself for the baby, that you're teaching them boundaries by having your own boundaries. And you know, so that really was my parenting style from the beginning. If you guys could see, my 13-year-old daughter is nodding in the background, which just, I'm like, oh,
That's the best reward.
so good when I start preaching about parenting. I'm like, oh, I hope they agree.
And of course,
Yeah.
given that we all make mistakes, we're not perfect, but when that's your foundation, I know for myself, I coach a lot of moms who have troubled teens. I wouldn't even say troubled. Scratch that word. teens were,
Adolescence is complicated,
yes,
right? No matter what.
struggling
Yeah.
with becoming teens and becoming independent and sometimes acting out. And I know for a fact from my personal experience, because people know that here, that I went through very difficult stuff with my teens, and I'm still, I mean, it's still not over. But the main focus that I really want moms to keep is to stay connected, because at the end of it, what really matters is love. And when they can still feel your love, even if they're not going to reciprocate in the moment because they're angry or whatever is going on, when they feel that it's like unconditional, no matter what they do, you will love them. It doesn't mean you will accept how they behave. You will set some boundaries, like you were saying, but you will love them no matter what. And that connection is stronger than anything, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say one of my parenting goals, and I don't really remember what age my kids were when I sort of articulated this to myself, probably as they were getting toward teenage years, um, is I just wanted to not overreact to anything they told me, so that they would always feel safe to tell me anything.
Yeah.
And whatever it is, you and I are on the same side. Whatever it is, we both want you to grow up happy and healthy and know who you are and be comfortable in your own skin. And so we're on the same side no matter what happens. So that was so sometimes, there have been things they've told me and I thought, ooh, I don't know what to do about this. But then that's the other thing, is just parenting with authenticity, is that I have verbalized, I don't know what the right thing is for me to do here,
Yeah.
because I want to keep you safe from this. But I also know that, by me making decisions for you, I'm not helping you learn to make
Yeah.
decisions. So I just verbalized it whenever I was, verbalized my process of trying to figure out what was the best thing to do to help them. And I think they learned then how to think through, you know,
And
pros
that,
and cons. And yeah.
I saw that in your book. At one point you talk about letting them, they have their own guidance system, because we are both also fans of Abraham Hicks. So of course it relates to that. And to just let them train on that, like use that, because if we don't give them a chance to use it and we decide everything for them, then it's like a muscle. You need to practice that.
Yeah. I think Abraham Hicks has definitely been influential in my parenting. Just the idea that we're not here to make these kids into a good adult.
Yeah.
They are here. They come in fully whole.
Yeah.
And our job is just to support them as they become who they are. And that they are a step ahead of us. They're the next generation, they're the next evolution. And so it's not to turn them into who we are, but just to support them as we say, wow, I wonder what you're going to do in the world.
Because I was talking about that with my friend yesterday. In some ways, I feel like a dinosaur when you talk about being able to switch your attention like that, how they can do that. And I can't. I can't.
Yeah, no, their brains are different.
Yes.
They definitely are. Yeah. And
And
I'll do that, they'll be like listening to a video in the background or something, and they'll start having a conversation with me. And I say, I know you can do 3 things at once, but I can't. You got to pause that in order for me to be able to hear you. So they've learned how to deal with my dinosaur brain. Yeah.
yes. And, especially, I have, my son was diagnosed with ADHD, and my oldest is probably ADHD too, but she uses exercise to calm herself down. But I see them like they can do their homework with a movie playing and it doesn't take away anything from their concentration. So I think as a parent, to be able to also accept the fact that we're different, and that is not necessarily less, how would you say less good? I'm trying to find a word. Worse, not, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
But different is healthy. Like
yes,
they're growing up in a different world than you and I grew up with.
yes,
And they may as well thrive in that world. Like
exactly.
them thriving in the world I grew up with doesn't help them.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah.
it's in a way it's getting outdated compared to
Yeah.
what the world is today.
Very quickly. Yeah.
Evolution is the key. There was another. Wait, I need to put my glasses back on. I'm sorry, because there was another thing I wanted to mention. That's the problem with not being able to read without glasses.
I'm just leaving mine on the whole time because then I
And
can
yeah,
see
but
you better. Yeah.
the reflection kills me when I like, when I'm interviewing someone and I see the light, I'm focusing on the reflection instead of being fully present.
Yeah.
And yes, something that I wanted to really emphasize is the difference between not liking or loving what they do and not making them feel bad. Like, for example, there is a sentence when you say about flipping the butt, which is it's practicing brain training. And I would love to talk about that. Um, I love you, but your messy room is driving me crazy. So, talking about the use of the but and the fact that you're not making anything wrong about them, but maybe a habit. What would you tell parents to use that, how to use that word but in a more efficient way?
Right, because it is powerful. And so I think sometimes people have said, just don't use the word but it's really powerful when we just know how to use it. So when we know that it negates whatever comes before and it
Yeah.
gives extra power to whatever comes after. So in that case, if you've said I love you, but then you've just negated that and you're
Yes.
putting more power to what comes after. So if you can instead say, okay, we need to figure out a solution for your room because there are bugs growing in your garbage or whatever.
Yeah.
But I know we can figure this out together. I want to come to a solution where you have ownership of it and I can live with it. Then you're giving more power to what comes after. So it's just a simple thing that it's easy. Yeah, it just makes communication work so much better.
And I know we use it because we're in the same circles of brain training with Dana Wild, but and we are not trained. We were not trained originally with that word, but it can be damaging even. So I really wanted to bring that to the awareness of parents and see where you put your but and what you put
Right.
after.
So you can still cover all the same topics, but if you flip what comes before and after the but, then it's a completely different conversation because we know we're emotional creatures. And when I feel attacked, my brain is not working at its optimal level, right? I'm doubling down and all of these things that we've learned about the brain, like your vision literally narrows when you
Yes.
feel attacked. Um, so if I can flip that around to setting up the expectation that we need to figure out a solution together, then everybody's brain is working better from the beginning.
Yes. Talking about brain training, is there anything else that we didn't talk about as far as parenting and using the power of brain training that you would like to mention before
Yeah.
people grab your book?
Yeah, the biggest thing, because when you start learning the power of positive psychology, I would call it, which is just simply like with psychology, there's a range of not being okay. And we know what those mental illness ranges are. And then there's okay. But knowing like that's only the bottom half of the range, and there's this whole top half of the range of thriving and creativity and innovation. And, like let's also talk about the top half of the range and how to help people get there. So that's all that positive psychology is not about being fake or pretending or whatever. It's really about learning when does my brain work best. Um, so when I first started learning that, I would find myself whining at my kids to be more positive. And that's an example of what does not work.
Yes.
So then what I figured out is it was nothing that I had to change in them. The only thing that I can control is how I'm feeling before I approach them.
Yeah.
So if I'm walking upstairs, like these kids never unload the dishwasher when I ask them, wow, I wonder how our interaction's going to go, you know? But if I walk upstairs thinking she must really be focused on something because she said she'd do the dishwasher and it hasn't happened, and so let me go see what she's focused on and remind her. It's totally me getting my brain on how awesome my kids are and how creative they are and, you know, all of that kind of stuff before I interact with them. It's nothing to do with changing them.
And that's
So,
so in my tribes and my circles, we talk about approaching a situation from your heart and preparing, like literally consciously sinking into your heart and see what you love about them. That's another way to do that, because that can be felt. The energy will even
mhm,
precede you in the room, and they can feel that, and that will change the dynamic in going
yeah,
on here.
yeah. And it just, one of the reasons I love my direct sales job is just I get to mentor other people. Um, and so I'm really clear that we're not just talking business. Like we're in life together as well. Um, and just recently had a woman who was describing to me the frustration she was having with her college age son. And I said, what's your favorite thing about him? And you could tell, just like it was like taking a deep breath, and just like she'd been so focused on trying to solve this problem that it had been a while, and you know, that she had said, oh, wait a minute, let me go back and remember all of his good qualities and all the things I'm proud of. And again, then your brain is working better. So of course communication is going to work better.
Your
Yeah,
brain is working better, everything works better, because um, it can, like I said, it can be felt, and on an energy level, but also on a brain level, all the cues that we pick up unconsciously, the body language, every single thing changes.
yeah.
That's something to really, I think it's crucial. That's the starting point. Where are you coming from in
Hmm.
in
And
your
then
story? What are you telling yourself?
it's empowering to know that we can't control other people, because to me that's the whole parenting journey.
Oh yeah,
Like learning that we cannot control anybody.
big
We can
time.
try 75 ways, but we can't control anybody. um, but what we can control, can't, is us, and then how much influence that can have when we figure out what's inside of us first.
Yeah,
So
I
which, oh sorry,
no, go ahead.
no, I was going to jump into which is why moms need to do self-care, but we're
Yes,
probably going to go
we
there
are
in a
going to
minute.
talk about that. Um, we I know personally it was painful for me to learn that I can't control anybody, because I really realized that when my kids became teens. We are taught as parents to be like controllers and enforcers, but that's not really where the power lies. The power lies into the impact that you can have when you let them develop those abilities that we were talking about. And we are the highest of what we can be at any moment. Of course, there will be up and downs, because we're human and there are emotions. But when you know the power of the brain, the power of the story you tell yourself on a regular basis, everything changes.
Yeah.
Um, so you covered it a little bit. I always ask the guests in my show what their definition of self-love is, because mostly a lot of women that I encounter don't know what it means to them, and there are many aspects of it. What is your definition, and how do you approach it?
Yes. Self-love is really just seeing our own worth. And we really, when we don't, and I learned a lot of this the hard way, just so people know.
Like all of us.
I learned it through a very painful divorce and realizing how unbalanced our marriage was, and things, that relationship skills that I did not have.
Yeah.
Um, so when we don't feel a sense of our own worth, then the only way we can find worth is by trying to control others or trying to put others down and whatever. Um, so it's not selfish to take care of yourself and to see your worth. It's life. Like it's the foundation of life. If you want to have healthy relationships, you have to learn your own worth. Um, and so there's even a short chapter in my book about self-care, and I talk about a few things
Yeah.
like drinking water that were impactful to me, but the biggest one is your self-talk, because that is our whole waking time. And the more you learn about how the brain works and the reticular activating system, and how our self-talk impacts the way our words come out, and that when we're constantly berating ourselves for something that we haven't done, we're 95 times more likely to do it again.
Yes.
So I just, one of my things that I say over and over again is beating yourself up is never productive. Never. And we've, before we have gotten this understanding of the brain, I think people thought that the only way to motivate somebody was to tell them what they were doing wrong.
Yes.
That's how coaches have functioned forever. And now that we're learning more about the brain, like, that is the least effective way to motivate people. That you might get a short burst in motivation, but there's a long-term demotivation. And that really, what's most motivating is for people to feel their own worth. And that's when you have this internal drive and excitement, and people that you're like, she's just flying. I don't even know what's going on, but she's just driven. And that's where that comes from, is from feeling your own worth. So yes, talking to yourself kindly, focusing on what you're doing right, focusing on what you like about yourself. Those things are the most powerful mental vitamins you can give.
Yes, stopping also all the criticism and the comparison, because I see
Mhm.
that comparison, especially with social media today, a lot of people are comparing
Yeah.
themselves, and that's a killer.
No,
That's
because you're
not good.
comparing, I'm sure you've heard this before, you're comparing someone else's highlight reel to your behind the scenes.
Yeah,
And it's not even an apples to apples comparison anyway.
no,
So,
it's not. And it's not a good example for our kids too, because I think they have more pressure than we did growing up, because we didn't have social media. And I see with my kids the pressure that can be on them from seeing images and from comparing themselves to unrealistic pictures and stuff that is not attainable.
right.
So you talked about not like stopping this negative self-talk. What else do you put in practice in your life as far as self-love and self-care that is your favorite way maybe to practice that?
Yeah. Um, so for me, it really has started to become a habit of this, just this. So I mean, yes, there are things I do, meditation, that kind of thing. It has to do with the age my kids are. Like, my kids don't need me to make them breakfast or get them dressed, and
Yeah.
so I do have more time now than I did 10 years ago when they were small. Um, so, but the thing that you can incorporate in any life is that, have I put on my own oxygen mask, whatever, and just figure out what that means for you.
Mhm.
Does that mean that I have to find a way to um, take a shower by myself, or like, what does that mean to put on your oxygen mask? Just because you can't function.
Yeah.
And that's why they have to teach us that. That's why they have to spell it out in an airplane, because our instinct is, what does my child need?
Yes.
And like, if you help your child and then you're gone, there's nothing that you can do. So figure out whatever that is for your oxygen mask and work it into your day.
What do you like as far as bringing pleasure and joy in your life?
The well, it's funny continuing to follow Hugh Jackman.
Okay.
It's one of those things that people would think, what is a self-respecting middle-aged business owner mom of teenagers doing, following his life all the time? And you know what? It brings me joy. And I'm like, you know what? He's my life coach. I why wouldn't you want to emulate someone like that? And so it's a constant learning thing for me. But other people, like maybe it's a show that you watch on Netflix, or
Yeah.
like, whatever it is.
Yes.
It's different for everybody, but just find that thing that, when, after you've done whatever it is, you just feel like, okay.
And I usually tell moms to have like a notebook, because sometimes we're tired, our imagination is not working as well. Have a notebook, and when you really enjoy something, write it in. I know I love walking in nature. That's something that I need on a regular basis to balance myself. And even it can be as small as having a cup of tea that you prepared with love for yourself, like if it was for a
Yeah.
beloved. Stuff
Yeah.
like that. It can be simple and not time consuming.
And you're so right about writing it down, Because when you're in that moment of,
Yeah,
oh, I'm losing my mind, you don't have access to what
yeah,
are those little things that make me feel better. So
exactly.
I encourage people on their phone, like on a notes app or whatever, to make a joy bringer list, is what I
Oh,
call
that's
it.
great.
And it can be sit down and pet the dog, or go look outside at the bird feeders, or play a song, or it, which sounds funny, but if you don't have those written down, like
Yes.
you said, you don't can't think of them in the moment, like, what do I need to do to make myself feel better?
Yeah,
So
because our amygdala is active, and our frontal brain, the frontal cortex, doesn't work as well in those moments. So we
yeah,
are like not resourceful at all.
so have a prepared list.
Yes, yes, I think it's the simplest way. And plus, just reading it will bring joy already, because you don't need, that's the major, even the gem of all of it. You don't even need to do the activity to feel how you would feel if you were doing it. Let's say you don't have time to take a hike. Close your eyes, remember a hike or imagine a hike, and just feel it in your body, and you will already feeling those good hormones. You will
Such a
trigger
good
them.
point,
Yeah.
because our brain doesn't know the difference between what we have, like what we're imagining inside, and something we're actually experiencing in the moment. It has the same effect hormonally and or chemically or whatever. So it's such a good point.
So before we part, I encourage people to read the book if they want to learn also about Hugh Jackman, because it's, I mean, I've seen the movie too. I loved it because the notion of creating something that started with a dream that everybody could think that it was not possible. I love this kind of stories. It's inspiring. And knowing that it's a true story, it's even better. Um, just reading it, it's very enjoyable because it's you're learning, but at the same time, it's entertaining. What would you like to say maybe that I didn't cover, that you, is there a question you wanted me to ask you?
I think, well, I know a lot of your community is specifically for single parents, which is, like, that's not something that I have experienced, thankfully. uh, but people might not know that Hugh's mom left when he was 8, and by left I mean they lived in Australia and she moved back to England, so like continents away. um, and I mean, she had some really severe postpartum depression, which they really didn't know what that was
Yeah.
50 years ago. There wasn't treatment and support for that and all of that. So I think it's encouragement. Just, sometimes I think, oh, what am I screwing up for my kids?
Yeah.
You know, and like Hugh says, he never doubted that both of his parents loved him. So even in times when, and he's told some stories that it was not pretty, and he went through some pretty angry times, but he didn't ever doubt that both of his parents loved him. So even, yes, parents, of course, we have days where we think we're screwing them all up,
Yeah.
um, but just know that whenever we can remember that we love them and show them that and tell them in what ways they are fascinating and inspiring and all of that, that that will come through.
Yes, and that's, we started with that, so that's a perfect ending
Yeah,
for the episode,
yeah.
because love is the strongest force of all, and every little bit counts. So that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I want to thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you for the opportunity. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And I really love your idea of following your passion and creating something out of it. That's really something that resonates and makes my heart sing to see stories like that. So for the audience, the book is called Hugh Jackman and the Joy Revolution. And like I said, I will put a link, but you can find it on Amazon. I think, I don't remember where I bought it
Yep,
from, but
yep.
so I'll put a link. Do you have a website, or is there anything that you're putting in place right now or to come?
Website is louisajoy.com.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can go check and see what you're going to come up with, because your brain is working.
Yeah, working on writing a leadership book, and maybe some online courses coming up, and you just never know.
That's the beauty of it, just to be
Yeah.
curious.
And I would welcome, I have a community on Facebook called the Joy Revolutionaries. So anybody that wants more joy in their life is welcome there as well. And there's a link from the website, louisajoy.com.
Okay. I think I'm part of your group. I am part of your group.
Probably, yeah.
Yes. So because we all need more joy. There is the more the better.
It is brain food.
Yes. Thank you, Louisa.
Thank you, Marielle.
For our listeners and our viewers, we'll see you in the next episode, and go and really check out Louisa's book, because joy is a fuel that has so many possibilities to create the dreams you want. Have a beautiful, joyful week, and I'll see you next time. Being a single mom can be challenging, but you don't have to face it alone. Join our community at facebook.com/groups/single and doing it all, and receive tools, tips, and free group coaching. And if you like this podcast, please review and rate us on iTunes. I would really appreciate it.